Forget about what is I am. The very fact that you can say Mike is. Why? Why are you is? Why is this building is? Why is it so ridiculously hot in here? Excuse me. So see, this is where you have the conversation with somebody who is uncertain about God. There must be the most basic principle at work that says existence exists. And what keeps existence in order? Now you begin to have the conversations about material creation. Now you can start to have the conversations about the hierarchy of being in order and keeping the universe in order. Why? Throw this to an atheist friend or an agnostic friend. Why does gravity remain constant? They don't know. So, if you really believe what you say, Mr. Atheist, or Mr. Agnostic, if you really believe that there's nothing keeping gravity, we had gravity last week, we had gravity this past week, we had gravity earlier today, we had gravity 60 seconds ago, but if you really believe what you say, you believe that in 5 seconds from now, we might not have gravity anymore. But you don't live your life that way. So you're a hypocrite. You don't live your life like you really believe what you say. And you sure as heck don't say what you believe. Because I bet, Mr. Atheist, that you're going to think, when this is over, that you're going to walk downstairs, get in your car, and it's not going to start floating. Unless you're driving around those flooded streets, at which point it floods a lot. See they don't believe that there's a disconnect between what they believe and what they say, or how they act. They don't believe these things. They don't believe them because they're inherently self-contradictory. Nobody lives their life as though the next moment they're going to poof off into non-existence. They don't. How could you? You couldn't do anything. So then we come to the matter of the physical world being created. We're skipping over the angelic world being created because we're just getting to the material world here. So you're having a discussion. So where do you get creation from? Well, what is creation? Creation is the material being coming into existence. Its existence being attached to something material. That's all. I mean, this is the elements of this that made this were created. Metal, whatever it is, gold, whatever it is. Those were created. And they just took their form in that matter. Well, what about the whole universe? How did that come into being? Again, you see the most basic questions, they will not have an answer to. Because the answer to all of these questions is God. What keeps gravity in order? What keeps gravity being gravity? What keeps the basic laws of the principles of the universe? Not the laws of the universe, but the principles that make those laws be realized. What makes that happen? Okay, we know if we put hydrogen, 2 hydrogen molecules and an oxygen molecule together, we know we get water. That's a law of the universe, right? 2 hydrogen, 1 oxygen, bam, you get water. Every time. If I pick up this coin and I let it go, it's going to fall. It's not going to float up every time. That's a law of the universe. If I drop it, it's going to fall. here on earth. Absolute guarantee. But what is the principle at work behind that law that keeps that law in effect? They have no answer for that. They have no answer for that. Because you have to admit, as you go further and further and further back up the road, there has to be something that makes all of those underlying principles remain constant, so that the laws will take effect. When you drop the coin or let go of the coin, it falls. You add these molecules to this molecule, you get water. Why?
Because of those.
What's that?
Force. Because of the force.
That's what?
Force.
Voris.
Oh, the force, yes. Yeah, in a way, true. So see, this becomes, when you start asking those, see, now you've moved on to their turf, and you've introduced something they don't have an answer for. And you can't answer, they can't just say, oh, well, I don't know, it doesn't matter. It says, oh, yeah, because what are we ultimately talking about here? This isn't just some academic discussion on somebody being able to prove there's a God or not. See, you, Mr. Atheist, you don't have a system of beliefs at all, other than you just don't believe God. So you don't really believe anything. What makes you tick, Mr. Agnostic? Why should I ever trust you? Because if you believe that the world is made up of random laws that break themselves and then come together and form new laws that break themselves, and you can't even explain why there's existence at all, why would I ever loan you $1,000? But you'll go to a bank and you'll say, hey, I want to buy a house. And the house costs, whatever, $200,000. I need to borrow $190,000 from you. If I'm the bank, I'm going to say, do you believe in God? No. You're not having my money. Why would I give you money? Because you can't be inconsistent with this. See, Catholics are consistent. You commit adultery, you die in that state, unrepented, you go to hell. Every time. No matter who you are, no matter how cute she was, you go to hell. Doesn't matter. See, we're very consistent. We don't say, you commit adultery, you die unrepented, oh, but it was on my birthday, so I get a pass. You? Very consistent. Not so the atheist, not so the agnostic. They must admit that at the end of the day, at the very bottom, the basement of their argument is there is no guarantee of anything. Because there's no thing, nothing that holds it in place. Because there's no God. Well, if that's the case, you aren't getting a dime of my money. Because today, the law is, you must repay me. But if you believe in your heart of hearts that tomorrow the law may change, well, I may never see my money again. And the law is a very broad umbrella term. There's physical laws like gravity. There's moral laws like you don't cheat on your spouse. There's legal, man-made positive law like you don't speed. Thank goodness I don't get caught at that very often. And all of these laws are rooted in something. Where does the state get the authority to fix a speed limit and say you won't go faster than 50 here, or we'll give you a ticket? Where does that authority come from? Where does the authority come from to say, if I jump out this window, I'm going to fall down? You know, the kind of moron who says, stands on a cliff 10,000 feet above the water and says, watch me break the law of gravity, and he jumps off the cliff. Well, he's not breaking the law of gravity, he's proving it. So, when we talk about arguing on this level, see, this is a very different argument than arguing with Protestants. There's nothing we've said tonight that Peter the Protestant, sitting right here, he'd agree with everything, right? We've made a case for God. We've made a case for ethics and law. We've made a case for the principles of the universe. There's nothing he wouldn't agree with here. Because they already believe a large chunk of this very basic stuff. They believe probably all of it. At least a reasonable Protestant does. I know that's kind of a bit of an oxymoron, but just kidding. Those who are watching at home, not really. So as you're looking at all of this, this is how you argue with somebody who doesn't believe in God. And this is the culture that you're in. This is the culture that you're in. See, this is why you can have a culture that says, kill the child in the womb. Because they don't believe in anything. They don't believe in anything in any substantial way. They might have created kind of a weird God in their own head, which they don't owe anything to. They don't owe worship to. They don't owe any kind of recognition or communications with. They don't live like this God that they've made up in their head is actually God. They just sort of say, oh yeah, there's a God thing or whatever, and that's it. But this God thing lets them kill children in the womb. It lets them marry and remarry and divorce and redivorce. It lets them do anything they want ethically. Well, that's not God. That's not God. So because of that, as you look at all of these arguments, you have to remember this is what you need to do. You need to think in these terms. Because these are the people you're going to be dealing with. It's going to be these people more and more and more, because this is the culture in the United States right now. And you guys are about this far behind the United States. You've allowed contraception. That means you're going to be allowing divorce and remarriage very shortly, which means you're going to be allowing abortion probably in a couple of years. If that RH bill sticks around, that's it. You're done. You're done as a culture. Watch the camera.
I am looking on the flip for the electric fan. Sorry.
I want you to try it.
It's not working. Lights up, it's not working.
But this is what it is. There is no kind of going back from this. Once you introduce one step, I mean, when we're all leaving here, we're going to be walking down steps, right? Unless you break the law of gravity as an atheist and float, we'll all walk down steps. Nobody walks down steps like this. Doesn't work. You walk down the steps. And one step goes down and leads to the next one going down. Well, that's what happens with morality. Nobody becomes immoral about one thing, which then opens up a whole field to be immoral about more things, and then says, oh, that's going too far. They move to the next thing. It's why in the question of ethics and morality, you always have to stop something immediately. It's why the church says that placing yourself in the dangerous occasion of committing a sin is a sin itself. If you're an alcoholic and you know that you'll drink and you'll take your family's money and you'll go get drunk, for you, not everybody, but for you to go into a bar, opening the door and saying, I'm not going to have anything to drink, I'll be able to take care of it, you'll stumble out of that bar in 2 hours, trash, and have spent your family's money. For you, even putting yourself in that situation becomes a sin, because human nature goes down. So the teaching of the church with regard to morality is don't even take the first step. Well, if that's true of individuals, it's also true of cultures and societies and countries. and cities. Once you take the first step, you are going to take the next step. It's how people are. I saw an interview with a guy who was a killer for the mafia back in New York. And when he got arrested finally, I think he had admitted to killing 53 people, assassinating them for the mafia. They gave him $10,000 every time he killed one of their enemies. Just a hired gun. And the number was like, you killed 53 people? And it's very interesting. He said, the first one was kind of hard, but all the rest got easier each time. Well, of course they do. That's human nature. That's why half of the abortions in the United States, half are to women who've already had one abortion. Because once you have one, it becomes easier to have the next. Once you cheated on one spouse, now it's easier to cheat on the next. Don't ever marry anybody who's left somebody for you. Because if they cheated on that person, they'll cheat on you. No matter how great you may think you are, when they married the first one, they thought that one was the greatest. See, there's a great logic to the church's moral teaching. It understands human nature, will always go to the lowest point that it can as quickly as it can. That's how we are. That's our concupiscence. That's our fallen state. That's why we need grace. Because grace enables, it's like somebody throwing us a rope in quicksand and they pull us up. If that rope does not come to you, you will sink of your own nature into the quicksand. And the church understands that. That's how it is. The church understands that because that's what our Lord told the church. This is how it is. So for somebody who doesn't even believe in God at all, or doesn't know what they believe, if anything, that's where you have to start having your conversation. And you have to understand that that's the conversation you need. Do not start quoting the Bible to an atheist. Why would an atheist care? They're not going to care. Why would they care? I don't accept your authority you're quoting at. But they have reason. Most of them. They have logic. Appeal to that. Show them the hypocrisy of their beliefs. Okay, even if you believe that, you don't act like it. Just make sure they can't say the same thing about you. Even though you believe that, you don't act like it. This is the great debate that you're going to have. Once you let contraception in the door, which you have done, all the rest of these things are going to come in. And the more they come in, and the faster they come in, and all of this stuff, the more people move away from God. Because the more steeped in sin you become. There is no in-between land. When you sin, you take a step away from God. So now, your progression is to continue to keep moving away from God. It now takes something to pull you back to get you to start moving toward God again. And as you're moving toward God, you continue to move toward God. But you sin, now you get put. This is why you must pray multiple times throughout the day. It's why you go to Mass. It's why you go to the sacraments or the graces. It's why you must always stay first and foremost in connection with God. Always. Always. It does you no good to go out and win an argument if you lose your own soul in the process. The very first thing you are charged to do is to save your soul. Obviously, cooperating with grace. We don't save our souls on our own. So, have we had enough of the lesson from the atheists?
Can I try to ask?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, since we are talking about atheists, I would like to make a question. According to the religion that God is merciful, protector, provider, that's the religion says.
Say it again.
That according to the religion, teaching of religion, that God is merciful.
Yes.
God is a protector. And
Is
also
protector?
Protector. And also provider.
Yeah.
If God really exists, why He allow those persons who die, innocent people, If God is really merciful, if God really protects us, why He allowed this things just like happened in
What is allow? What is allow evil?
It's really
Michael,
God. Why He allows that? And yet that the religion says our God is God of love. Why He allows it?
See, we have to.
If really God exists.
Yeah.
Second, do you agree that God is a creation of human mind?
Is what?
Do you agree that God is only creation of human mind?
No, of
Human
course we
mind.
do.
Michael, I'll put that into perspective. Several weeks ago, there was this great flood here in Mindanao, and many people had died.
Mhm.
Thousands of them. I think that's where he's coming from.
Why? If there is really God, why He allows this? According to the religion that God is a merciful God, is a protector God, is a provider, and yet He allows this. Please answer.
When God is when Adam and Eve sinned and God responds to their sin, if you go through what God says in relation to everything, sin disrupts the entire order of creation. Everything. It destroys man's relationship with God. It destroys man's relationship with man. Adam and Eve now become like competitors with each other, where before they were in harmony with each other. Now they're out of harmony. Man is out of harmony with God, man is out of harmony with himself, and man is out of harmony with nature, with the world. And the world is out of harmony with itself. All manner of evil floods into the world because of sin. What is sin? Got to understand all of the words correctly. To say God is all loving, therefore anything bad that happens means God's not loving. No, that's a total misunderstanding of what we mean when we say God is loving. When sin comes into the world, well, back up. When sin came into the angelic world, when Lucifer said, "Nope, I will not serve," immediately those angels are damned. Bam! Jesus says, "I saw Satan fall like lightning from the sky." That was it. They were done. God could have done the same thing to the material world, including us. He could have said, and rightly would have said, "That's it, all creation is damned." But he didn't. Creation, meaning everything in the material world, man, our relationship to God, to each other, to the world to itself, everything became damaged, but not broken and damned and over with. And we hear, as you go through those things, God says to Adam, from now on, by the sweat of your brow will you bring forth bread from the earth. Before sin, what did God do? He made Adam, and he put him in the garden to be a gardener. Well, anybody who has a garden knows that it's very nice, and you make it pretty, and it's just a nice, pretty thing. It's so nice to do that many people have it as a hobby. They don't consider it work. But after sin, man switches from being a gardener, now he becomes a farmer. Now he has to fight with the earth to get it to bring forth food. So sin disrupts the order of everything. God allows that so that man has a second chance.
Yes.
The angels didn't get a second chance. But because we're stupider than the angels, the difference between an adult doing something rotten and a 9-year-old kid. You say, well, the 9-year-old kid was he did it, it's wrong, he needs to be punished, but he's not the same as the adult. The adult knew better and understood everything. The kid was just stupid and young and whatever, so you give him a second chance. But he still goes to his room with no dinner. So that's what happens to us. So God gives us a second chance, but not without punishment. And the punishment in this life is that evil is allowed to happen. What you've asked is the same question that millions of people have asked all through human history. Why does God allow evil? He doesn't create it. He's not the author of it. Sin is the creator. Evil is in the world as a result of sin. And there are two types of evil. There's moral evil, where people do something immoral, they commit an evil, rape or murder or whatever. And then there's the natural evils of the world, like devastating floods, hurricanes, earthquakes, and big huge fires, and whatever, all the horrible, nasty things that go on in the world, in the natural or nature world. All of these things happen because the world is infected with sin. But when Adam and Eve sinned, God did not kill them. He ended Satan, Lucifer's life, in the angelic realm. He went down to hell, and that was it. He's over. Us, we get a second chance. And the second chance we get is our life. Would it have been fair and just when Adam and Eve sinned for God to say at that very instant, that's it, bam, you're in hell with Satan? Would that have been just? Sure it would have been. Don't ever think that God owed us something. Absolutely not. It would have been totally just, and the justice of God would have been satisfied with that act. But God chose to go another way. And the other way he went was that he would satisfy his own justice by offering himself up. But that sin absolutely needed to be atoned for. God could not have said, that's all right. He'd be going against his nature. Nothing can go against its nature. So, in a natural world, remember what a natural world means. When we say to ourselves, oh, that's just human nature. Oh, that's just the natural thing to do. If you see, I don't know, let's say you're at work and you've worked really, really hard on some project and you stayed behind every night for a month and worked 5 and 6 extra hours and you gave up time with your family and you worked really hard, and then there you are sitting there at the desk with another workmate, a coworker, and your boss comes in and says to your coworker, great job, all the work you did, this project's fantastic, and ignores you. Every single person in this room in the world would be like, what the hell? I'm the one that did all the work. Why? Because that's the way our fallen human nature responds. Because our fallen human nature doesn't think immediately of the other. It thinks first of the self. And all of creation is like that. Everything thinks of itself first. That's why Jesus has to come and say, no, think of God first. The first commandment is love the Lord your God, mind, heart, soul, and strength. The second commandment is love your neighbor. Stop thinking about yourself, because that will land you in hell. Think about God and your neighbor. That's the difference. So, when you take evil that's present in the world, moral or natural, those evils are a result of sin. And the word sin, S-I-N, comes from the Latin word sine, S-I-N-E, which means without. Meaning something that is supposed to be there is absent. So if I rip a big slash in this shirt and rip it open, and show my Big belly. If I slash it open, well, this shirt, in a natural way, is in a state of sin. It's without what it's supposed to have. It's supposed to have a wholeness to it, a completeness to it, but it has a big rip in it now. So the shirt is damaged in its very nature. Is it still a shirt? Yeah, but its nature has changed. It's got a huge rip in it. So now I can't do the things I used to do. I can't put this shirt on with a huge rip in it and put a tie on and go to work. People go, why do you have a big rip in your shirt? So the shirt isn't able to be used completely for what it was intended to be for. I can still put it on and button it, but I can't use it. Why? Because it has fallen from its natural state. The way it was supposed to be, it has fallen down to a fallen nature. And that's true of everything in creation. So floods were not designed by God to kill people. People weren't designed by God to kill people. Everything that goes wrong in the world goes wrong in the world because of sin. Even floods, even earthquakes, tsunamis, everything. God allows these things. He allows these things because somehow, some way, in the mystery of God, He draws something better out of them. And we have that guarantee because that is exactly what happened on the cross.
Can I follow up, sir?
Sure.
Okay. My second question was, do you agree that God is a creation of human minds? If you talk about Abraham, he is the father of faith in a Christian. He was thinking that there is a supreme being. He thinking of, because if you talk about Bible, Gospel, it's already written by men. But if you take the very start of human being, he was thinking that there is supreme being above him. On that premise, do you agree that God is a creation of human mind?
No. I believe that God, if you mean by that, let's make sure I get to understand it. If you believe that, if you mean by that God doesn't really exist and man just imagined him, no. If you mean that God has placed in man the capacity for us to reason to the fact that there must be some supreme being, well then yes. So it depends on which way you mean the question. But Abraham wandering around before God ever says anything to him. Abraham just wandering around with his camels and his wife, out looking at the stars one night and thinking, wow, there must be something that made all those stars. There must be some being of some sort. That's not him creating God. Objectively, God either exists or he doesn't. And man doesn't have the ability to create God or uncreate him. So if God is, then man just needs to recognize that. If God isn't, then man imagining that there's a God or creating him in his mind or his imagination doesn't mean anything. Any more than me standing here imagining in my mind that there are purple cows on Jupiter that pull levers and make the world go around the sun. I can think it all I want. It doesn't make it any real at all. So, no, God is not a creation in man's mind, but man's mind has the ability to reason to the question, where did everything come from? And in that respect, look, the Greeks, 500 years before Jesus appears on earth, the Greeks had figured out the immortality of the soul. That's what Plato and Socrates is all about. That the soul must be immortal. And they figured that out on their own. So there are different things that unaided, unassisted human reason can know about the spiritual order, the immaterial order. But it can't know everything. Even in heaven, we won't know everything about God because we will still be finite in heaven. We'll be a lot better off, but we'll still be finite. We'll never be able to fully understand God, even in heaven, all through eternity. It won't be, okay, I've been here now for 600 trillion years, and now I understand God. Because there'll always be 600 trillion plus one. You will never be able, none of us. That's the glory of heaven. That you will continue to fall in love more. And however much love you had these last trillion years, you will have even more the next trillion. It'll always be new. It'll always be fresh. It will never end. And I don't mean it's just like you know someone and you're with them forever. That's boring. Why do we get bored of each other? Because we have an end. Right? And there's only so many hobbies somebody can talk to you about. And if you get married to someone for 85 years, at some point, you're going to get bored with each other. It doesn't mean you stop loving each other. But you know what? You're not going to want to hear about your wife's mother again. You don't want to hear about the vacation that Aunt Sally went on again. I've heard all the last 73 vacations. I don't need to hear about the 74th. But in heaven, there is no succession of moments like that. It's just that instant of love that just keeps like mushrooming out like a nuclear explosion. And there's nothing on the borders to stop it. It just keeps going. Like diving into water, and you say you can breathe in the water. You just keep swimming down, just going to this great light. You never reach the light, but you just keep moving toward it, and the closer you get to it, the more immersed you are in it. But you never get to it, you never know it all. And imagine being in love like that, where the love is always fresh, where you never get bored or fed up with the person, where it's always exciting and new and fresh. And you see all that stuff in all those love movies all the time. You know, I want to grow old with you. Yeah, until about the first 2 or 3 years have gone by. You're like, aren't you old yet? Oh yeah, when it comes to the evils of the world, whatever they are, God allows them so that He can bring some greater good out of them. And we have to remember also, as Catholics, even in the face of death, that's not an end. You know, did you notice? Any of you notice when they changed the words to the creed last Advent? They didn't say He died. What did they say?
Expired.
No? Oh, maybe they say that here in the Philippines. Maybe the translation is different here. They say He underwent death, as in it's a process that you go through. People used to try to trick Catholics by saying, when Jesus died on the cross, did God die? That's a trick question. It's like, you know, can God make a rock so big He can't lift it? It's a trick question. Well, that rock question, it doesn't make sense. You've set up opposite parameters that clash with each other and don't make sense. But if you ask about God dying, well, that's because the understanding somebody has of dying means it comes to an end. We don't think that as Catholics. We don't think that at all. We don't think death is an end. Death is a change.
Excuse me, sir, but we have the doctrines of hypostatic union.
Mm-hmm.
It is only one person, the second divine person, Jesus Christ,
Mm-hmm.
and two natures,
Two natures, right?
the divine and human.
Mm-hmm.
And the teaching is the divine person tests death.
In His humanity.
But because hypostatic union, however, there is a so-called the death of God.
Well, again, not the death of God as in He comes to an end in His
Yes.
existence. That's what the world means when the world talks about death.
Not death of annihilation,
Right.
but something, there is a separation.
Sure.
So therefore, if we agree that Jesus is God and has two nature, and he died, therefore there is a separation of divine human soul from his body.
Yeah.
And therefore God, we can say in the second nature that God tested death. Sure.
Instead of
In his humanity.
Okay.
That's why he needed a body. That's what St. Augustine says. St. Augustine sums that whole argument up very nicely in this following little phrase. He says,
divine nature.
we could not live, he could not die. So he died so that we could live. He needed our body, our human nature, because God strictly in divinity can't die. God is a spirit. How would a spirit die? It's just one thing. Nothing could decompose. There's nothing to break apart. So even when we talk about death, we're not talking about a spiritual death. We're talking about our soul leaves our body and the body dies. And typically that would happen to everybody, but in the case of our blessed Lord, because his body was perfect, because his humanity was perfect, even in the grave, his body did not experience corruption. It didn't start to decompose. So it was glorified the instant it was revivified with his divinity, but it didn't begin to decompose. It experienced death, as in, Father, into your hands I commend my spirit, died. The body is dead, but God didn't die. God experienced death, but only because he put our flesh on him that allowed him to be able to experience death. That's why he had to do it. It's actually quite amazing when you think about it.
Question? Other question? Ace.
One more question.
Ace. Question from Joe. The question. How sige?
One more question.
The flag is natural.
Do you agree or do you believe that faith and feelings or emotions is certainly a component in Christian?
Component of what?
Goes to the city.
Faith and
Or the components of each other?
do you believe that or do you agree?
Ask the question a different way. I'm not sure I understand. what you're
Okay, my
asking.
question is this. Faith without religion, can we consider a real faith?
Well, there is a natural human faith. I have faith right now, absolutely unrelated to anything religious. I have faith. It might be unfounded, but I have faith that you do not have a gun in your pocket and you're going to blow my head off.
It's not related to.
So I have a natural human faith that when I stick the key in the car and turn it, the car will start. So, yeah, there's a difference between the supernatural virtue of faith and the human virtue of just believing and accepting something. I believe when I go to work for 2 weeks, I'll get a check. I might not. Maybe my boss is a loser. Charlie would say his boss is a loser. Maybe my boss will just take my money and go to the bank or go to Las Vegas and gamble it all away. I don't know. But you have to operate on some level of just natural faith that the world behaves a certain way.
What is the real faith, sir?
So faith, the supernatural virtue of faith, which I think is what you're talking about, is the belief that God, the church defines it in the Catechism, faith is the belief that God will do what he has said he will do. That's a belief in God, which is an entirely different, same word, entirely different meaning of faith. Supernatural faith versus human natural faith. I believe when I put my shoe on and tie my shoelace, it's going to stay tied until I untie it.
So the Hindus or another religion believe also not. There is not. You have faith.
The Muslim.
Because the faith itself, faith, hope, and charity, those three are the supernatural virtues oriented toward God. So the virtue of faith, hope, and charity, those three virtues come from God. We can't generate those of ourselves. That's why atheists exist, because they don't have this supernatural virtue. They don't have what we call the gift of faith. So any supernatural faith is always oriented toward God, in who God is, because that's where the faith, that's where the virtue comes from. So God doesn't give someone the virtue, supernatural virtue of faith, and then that person take that supernatural virtue and go believe in Mickey Mouse. But there is inside each person a natural human virtue of religion. And that religion bespeaks an expression of a natural human belief in something supreme. That's why there's so many world religions. Because there is something in the human being that looks up into the night sky and says, wow, there must be an explanation for all of that. But somebody just saying, there must be an explanation for all of that, and it's this great big tree in the middle of the forest. This tree is God. Or this blackboard is God. That's not a supernatural virtue of faith, because it's not oriented to be true God. That's an expression of a natural virtue of faith, trying to reason that there must be a God somewhere. But it's a good place to start when you're talking to somebody. If somebody's willing to say, I don't understand anything about God, I just fell off the planet Mars and landed here, boy, there must be something that made everything, but I don't know anything about it. Well, that's a good place to start having a discussion with them. Remember when Paul shows up in Athens, and they have all their gods, and then there's that one altar to the unknown God. And that's where Paul plants himself. And he's making great headway until he says that, and our God was crucified. They're like, what? No God would die? Get out of here. And they chase him out of Athens. But he had something to work with there at the beginning. That's why they had so many gods. They didn't know which one was right. Or they didn't know which one was the highest. And the Greek gods really weren't gods in the sense that we understand, like an all-perfect. They were just really super-duper human beings that had all kinds of powers, like the Avengers. But, or Star Trek, or Star Wars, or something. But they weren't gods in the sense that we think of God. So they were just more powerful than humans. Is that it?
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
That's for the night. And tomorrow we'll start at 12 noon with a mass at Sacred Heart of Davao. So ready, and until after the mass, may mga talks kami po siya.
Where?
Mga Christian.
Dito tayo po, after the mass, inside the church. Sa baba.
I am.
Yes. I told you.
So, have a prayer.